I'm Chef Frank, this is Protocooks, and today we're making ravioli. Before we start the video, I want to remind you guys to like and subscribe. Ravioli are one of the many Italian filled pastas. They come in all shapes and sizes, and it's basically just 2 sheets of pasta put together with a filling in the middle. We're going to work on 2 different fillings today and 2 different styles of making these ravioli. Let's make the pasta. I'm going to do this fairly quickly. I'm not going to go into much detail about the pasta making. If you want a more detailed version of how to make pasta, I have a 101 video I'm going to link up here. Check it out. It goes through all the details. Our pasta is 3 simple ingredients. Italian 00 flour, which is just a very finely milled flour that gives our pasta a nice kind of smooth, supple feel. Eggs and salt. That's it. I'm going to do this the grandma way. If you have a mixer, you can do that. But what I'm going to do is basically just take my flour, and I'm making a large amount. I'm making about 1 kilo of flour because I'm going to make raviolis and I'm going to freeze some of them. So I take my kilo of flour, which is 2.2 pounds. We're going to make a well and crack our eggs into it. I got about 1 kilo of flour and 10 eggs. Pinch of salt, mix it up to bring the flour in. Once it's mixed in, we can kind of chop it up and get it all together. And then we're going to add a little water here because it's a little too dry. We're going to keep kneading and kneading and kneading. And in a second or two here, you're going to see me poke the dough just to test and see if it has some spring back. Knead till your arms fall off. We're going to wrap it in some plastic wrap and set it aside. One of the fillings we're doing today is a cheese filling. And I have ricotta, Pecorino and Parmesan cheese, some Fontina, and some mozzarella. The mozzarella gives us a little stretch. The Fontina is just this beautiful creaminess. An egg, some chopped parsley, salt, and pepper. Super simple. And basically what we're going to do is we're just going to dump everything in. I'm going to throw the egg in. And the egg basically just holds it together. If we don't put the egg in, our filling gets kind of watery and kind of like separates out. So I like an egg in there just to bind it. The cheese also helps bind it. And I have a fair amount of cheese. I want these to be nice and cheesy, so all that cheese goes in. And then our parsley as well. And then we season with lots of black pepper and salt. Now with the salt, we want to be a little careful just because the cheeses have a lot of salt in them, so just be careful not to over salt. And then a nice pinch of some kosher salt. And then we just mix it up. Get it all in there. You'll notice also that I didn't finely grate my mozzarella or Fontina. I left it on like kind of a rough shred, which I like, because I don't need everything to be finely grated. My Pecorino and my Parmesan were finely grated, but I left my other like stretchy cheeses a little larger so that when we cut into the ravioli, we'll actually see some of those strings. All right, I'm gonna throw this in the fridge until we're ready to fill our raviolis. Here's what I have for our meat filling. Ground pork beef and veal, onions, prosciutto diced up, garlic, mortadella or fancy Italian bologna, grated Parmesan, white wine, a nice dry white wine, and some olive oil. This is how I make my meat filling, and this is kind of a take on a traditional tortellini filling, but I really love it, so I'm going to use it for ravioli. We're going to start out by putting our olive oil in the pan, and then I take my prosciutto, and I'm going to render out the prosciutto. Get some of the fat out. I'm not going to make it super crispy. I don't want it crispy. I just want to render some of the fat out, get some of that nice flavor. Lightly brown. So the prosciutto has a little bit of color. I'm going to add my onion. Just a touch of salt and pepper. Give my onion just a little bit of color, or just start to get color before I add my garlic. Okay, add our garlic. I like a fair amount of garlic. Basically just cooking everything until it's fragrant. Oh, make sure you get everything everywhere. So once our garlic starts to smell fragrant and not raw, you'll smell it getting a little toasted. Now I'm gonna add my meat. And I'm just gonna break it up. Hit this with a little salt and pepper. Like I said, I'm not too worried about it being brown. I just want this to be cooked all the way through. Okay, and then I'm gonna add about a cup of white wine. I don't think I need it all. I want the wine to cook out, all the alcohol to cook out, and just to kind of cook it down until it's almost dry. With ravioli fillings, you don't want them to be super wet. You want them to be fairly dry, especially when they're cold. If they get a little moisture when they heat up, that's fine, but if they're super wet when you put them in your ravioli, they will soak into the pasta dough and make your ravioli super soft. So this is cooked down and it's almost dry. I want to keep just a little bit of moisture in there so you can see it's kind of thick. I'm going to take it off the flame. I'm going to put it on a sheet tray and I'm going to let this cool all the way. Get it cold. Okay. Spread it out. And we're going to get this nice and cold. My cooked meat mixture is chilled. I'm going to put this into my food processor. You can see that the wine is actually thickened up a little, and that's what I want. I don't want it to be watery. Get it all. Don't be in a rush. Get all that beautiful flavor in there. All right. Right, put that aside. We're gonna add our mortadella. I'm gonna put an egg in. Again, the egg's just gonna help bind everything together. And I'm gonna put some grated Parmesan in. And we're just gonna puree it up until it's smooth. Whenever I use a Cuisinart, I always have a rubber spatula handy, and I scrape down the sides once in a while just to make sure that there's no big chunks. And it probably doesn't look all that pretty. I don't really put any herbs in it. You can put some herbs in it if you want. It doesn't look pretty, but it tastes so good. I'm gonna give it a taste. I got my trusty Star Wars spoon. And just a note, if you don't have one of these, you can still cook, I promise you. It's good, a little more pepper, and just a little bit more salt. Right, I'm gonna finish pureeing. The meat filling is done. It's pureed really nice. It holds together really well. That's the texture I'm looking for. One of the pieces of equipment that I like to have for filling ravioli is a disposable pastry bag. I bought these. It was like $6 for 10 of them or $7 for 10. They're really handy. If you can't get these, you can easily use a spoon to kind of fill your ravioli. I think this is just quicker. This is what we do in the restaurant industry. It goes a lot faster. So I would recommend getting some pastry bags. So I take my pastry bag. I'm going to unfold it. I'm not going to cut a hole in until later. I'm going to unfold it and I'm going to put it over my hand. So my left hand makes like a C, and I'm going to take my filling and I'm going to fill my bag. I'm not going to overfill this with filling. A lot of times when people are using pastry bags, they fill it so much they have trouble squeezing it. So I'm only going to go about a quarter of the way up. I'm not going to use all of my filling. I'm going to put the rest of it in the fridge until I need it. All right, I take it, shake it so that it pushes down to the bottom, and I twist, right? And I'm gonna put this aside until I'm ready to do my ravioli. I fold it over so it holds it closed, right? Let's put that aside. Let me do the cheese. Same thing for the cheese. We open up our pastry bag, unfold it onto my non-dominant hand, make kind of like a C so that holds the bag, and fill. Before we fill a ravioli, we have to roll out our pasta. I have a pasta machine. I got this when I got married over 21 years ago. It lasts forever if you take care of it. One of the things you have to be very focused on is keeping your pasta dough from drying out. So I have my plastic wrap, right? I have a big ball of dough here. So I'm gonna unwrap it, but I'm gonna save my plastic wrap. You can use a towel. I have a towel here too. Even when you're filling your ravioli, you really don't want it to dry out. So I'm just gonna take a nice slice of dough. It's well rested. It's a really nice dough. It's not super wet. It's not too dry. I'm gonna rewrap it so it doesn't dry out. I take my pasta dough. I'm gonna put a little bit of flour. You don't wanna use a ton of flour. And I'm gonna start on the lowest number. Lowest number is usually the thickest. And with this, it's number 1. Okay, so I roll it. And then immediately what I'm gonna do is gonna take this and book fold. 1, 2. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna give us a nice kind of even square. So this is gonna go in book fold on the one side again. Okay, and look at that, it gets nice and even. A little more flour. Try not to use too much flour. go with the 1 again, and now I can start going down my numbers. 1, bring it down to 2. Down to 3. Now you don't want to rush this and go skipping numbers, because if you skip the numbers, it starts to tear the pasta. Go to 4. When I handle the pasta, I try and use the backs of my hands because my fingers tend to poke through or make marks. Going to 5. And keep on going down the numbers. 6. Flop it over. And because my pasta isn't too wet, it's not really sticking to itself. 7. Okay. 8. Flop it over. Just make sure we have a nice square. All right, I'm at 8. And I'm going to go one more to the lowest, or the highest number, the lowest. 7. Flop it over so it's nice and flat. Just make sure it doesn't roll in on itself. And that's what we're looking for. Look at that. Super thin. Beautiful. We're going to start with our meat ravioli, and a couple things I want to talk about that we need. I'm going to do 2 different methods on how to stuff these. And my meat ravioli, I'm going to use cutters. I have these nice fluted cutters. I'm going to probably do that size for my ravioli. And then I go 2 or 3 down, maybe 4 down. And you'll see what this is for in a minute. Okay. The other thing I need is an egg wash. So I'm going to take an egg. I have a little bit of water in my dish. Beat this up with a little bit of water. And I have a pastry brush. If you don't have a pastry brush, you can use your fingers. But I want that beat up really nice. All right, so now we're ready to fill. I have my pastry bag. I have my meat filling, a knife, and just cut it. Put it aside. I have my dough. And for this, we're going to make, it's basically 2 pieces of pasta on top of each other. So my dough is folded directly in half. I'm going to cut it right down the middle. Put this piece aside for a second. Right? Put a little flour underneath so that this kind of moves around really well. I'm going to brush my bottom with just enough to make this a little sticky. I don't want to make this really super wet, just enough to get my ravioli to stick. Not ravioli, my pasta to stick. Now I'm going to fill. So I usually do offset. Now with a pastry bag, everyone tries to squeeze really hard, when all you really have to do is twist. If you keep this twist really tight, you really don't have to squeeze a lot. I go straight up and down, and I'm just going to go offset. Right, so I'm probably putting about an ounce into each ravioli. And then I take my pasta, my top sheet, and I'm going to lay it on top. Let me flip it over. I'm going to lay this on top. Okay. And stretch this out just a little so it covers really well. And then I take my fingers and try and squeeze out as much air as possible around the filling. Get all that air out. If you have to stretch your dough just a little, get all that air out. Good. So I'm going to crimp around, get all the air out, but then I'm going to use my cutter, not the cutter side. So that's the side I'm using for cutting, but if you use the opposite side, it's rounded. So I get one that's smaller than the actual size of my ravioli, more like the size of my filling, and I turn this over and I crimp with that. So I have a nice round crimp around my filling. Then I get my size of my ravioli and I'm going to cut with the cutter side. Right? Press down, give it a little twist. Press down, give it a little twist. All right. Get rid of this. We don't need it. And then what I do is I get my ravioli and I make sure just to go around it and make sure that there's air out of it and then it's stuck together. And it goes onto my sheet tray with a little bit of flour on the bottom. Right, just make sure it's sealed because we don't want these suckers popping open when we cook them. When I have a full sheet tray of these ravioli, if I'm not going to serve them today, I can take this sheet tray, place it in the freezer. Once these are firm, I can take them off and put them into a Ziploc bag and just boil them like I would any other pasta. This is how we make our cheese ravioli. I have my egg wash. It's just 1 egg and a little bit of water. And I'm going to brush the side closest to me and leave the other side dry. Don't go too crazy with that. I also have a really nice round cutter here. This is La Gondola. It's made in Italy. It's brass. One of my coworkers, Barry, gave it to me as a thank you for training him. It is beautiful and heavy, but you don't need this. You can easily just use a knife or get a cheaper version of this, but this is just gorgeous. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take my cheese filling. Again, I wanna make sure that I twist this nice and tight, and I'm gonna fill closer to me. Right, give it a good squeeze. Every time I squeeze, I twist. These are going to be more rectangular. They're not going to be round. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pasta sheet, fold it to where the filling is, and fold it directly in half. Squeeze from back to front. Get as much air out as possible. These are what we call rustic. Right? Try and get as much air out as possible. I'm lining my edges up, squeezing my air out, pressing down, sealing it up. Okay, and then I get my roller and I'm going to cut off my ends just to square it up. Roll down the front. Same thing here. Roll down the ends. Roll down the front just to square it off. Okay, and then I'm just going to roll in between. If I have a little extra pasta, I'm going to trim that off because I don't want these to be that big. Just a little extra. Get rid of it. All right. Trim my extra off if I have a little bit of extra. And that's it. That's our cheese ravioli. So I go in and I'm going to just squeeze these a little tight so that they basically will stay closed. They go onto my tray. Squeeze whatever air out I can and squeeze them tight. And our pasta is done. It's finally time to cook our ravioli. I have my water boiling and you can see that it's at a nice even boil. It's not like a turbulent sea, right? I want it to be like this because I don't want my ravioli to really kind of get beat up, just as long as the water is moving. I'm gonna season my water with a lot of salt. I want this to be sea salty, okay? And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put both ravioli in at the same time. Both fillings are pretty much the same density, the pasta is the same thickness, so I'm gonna cook them together. I just basically want my filling to get heated through. Everything's cooked in here. All we really need is for the egg to set up, and then we'll give it a taste. So I'm gonna drop them in. I'm gonna give like 3 or 4 of each. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 cheese. And then we'll give 4 meat. Right? A lot of people say, oh, once they float, they're ready. No, I mean, you can see they're floating already. It's only been a few seconds. So I really want them to come back to a simmer and let it cook for 2 or 3 minutes. Basically, I want my pasta to cook all the way through and I want my filling to get hot. On the side, I have a bowl and I have some extra virgin olive oil. When I take these out, I'm just gonna toss them with a little extra virgin olive oil. As far as sauces go, you can do any sauce you want with these. Tonight, if I eat these, I'll probably do a tomato sauce. If you want to check out a video for meatballs and tomato sauce, we have a video I'll link up above here. You can use that with the cheese or the meat, either one that you want. But you can pretty much use any sauce you want with these. A little butter, a little sage, or a little butter and herbs is perfect as well. Our water has come back up to a simmer. I'm going to take out our ravioli. Just try and get most of the water off. And I'm eating all these, so I'm not worried about mixing meat and cheese because they're all mine. Okay? I'm going to just toss them with a little bit of the extra virgin olive oil. Okay? And I'm going to plate them up and we'll give them a taste. Now for the moment of truth. Let's taste these ravioli. I'm going to go with the cheese first. I'm going to cut it in half. And you can see, right, when I pull it apart, the cheese filling is nice and gooey. But pasta is nice and tender. My filling is nice and soft and cheesy. Absolutely delicious. Very happy with that. I'm going to try my meat ravioli now. Okay. I love that mortadella. Again, the pasta is nice and tender. Absolutely delicious. And you have to try this. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a thumbs up, like, subscribe, hit the little bell to get notifications when we have a new video out. We have merch in the description down below, Need Salt t-shirts. I want to thank our patrons on Patreon for supporting us. We really appreciate it. We have a P.O. box in the description down below. And that's ravioli. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm Chef Frank. This is Protocooks. Have a good one. Just a quick reminder to Dennis to get a light bulb for his hood. We fixed ours. You're up, buddy.